Real Agriculture comes to you today from Northward, Ontario. We're at the Bear Crop Science Dead Weeds Tour, and we're joined by Dr. Jason Norsworthy, University of Arkansas weed scientist. Sir, thanks for taking the time.
Glad to be here, enjoying it.
I want to talk a little bit about weed resistance. You've been talking to a group here about weed resistance, specifically glyphosate weed resistance. We've been through ragweed, been through fleabane. I guess the big conversation now is Palmar Amaranth. What can you tell us about this weed?
Palmar Amaranth is really the weed that's had a major impact on U.S. agriculture. It's a weed that really has started off in the southern U.S. and 2005 it was found in Georgia for the first time. Glyphosate resistance was 2006. We found it in Arkansas, and basically it is spread throughout the entire southern U.S. It is a weed, I say southern U.S., it's actually starting to spread into the midwestern U.S. It's heading north, and it's been found as far north as central Michigan at this point. And it's a weed that once it's out of control, when we have glyphosate resistance in the field, we can quickly lose a field. We've had a lot of production fields throughout the Mid-South where we've actually had to till those fields up as a result of failure to control the weed.
Now you call it like pigweed on steroids.
I call it, yes, because the group here is very familiar with red root pigweed. Pigweed is very common here, so it is a pigweed. Palmar Amaranth is, and it's pigweed on steroids in the sense that in our climate it's going to grow, once it gets to about 4 to 5 inches in size, it's going to grow to 2 to 3 inches per day. So you can quickly lose control of the weed, and again, once you lose control of it, you're going to actually lose the crop.
And heading to Michigan and not too far off our borders, right?
Absolutely, and the thing about it is, again, it's not a weed that's historically been in the northern U.S. It's not a weed that you're commonly you're not going to find it here in southern Canada. But with the global society we live in today, with the transport of grain, if you take a look even at Michigan, they were buying feedstocks out of the southern U.S. Obviously, that's a major weed in our cropping system, so it was introduced into Michigan. It's in northern Indiana today, and people once said, well, it wouldn't move forward, would not move north due to the climate, but that's not the case at all. It thrives very well on these rich, fertile soils.
Now let's talk a little bit about glyphosate. Now you're a big fan of glyphosate, but it's a difficult product these days to keep. And what you're preaching really is diversity.
Absolutely. Glyphosate is the world's greatest herbicide, and as I said today, I mean, it's really probably equivalent to penicillin in terms of the impact that it's had on the global society as a whole. And in agriculture, there's absolutely nothing that would rival the discovery of glyphosate. It's a very effective herbicide, and we need to do everything that we can to continue to be able to effectively use that herbicide. And it's the key there is really diversity. At Bear Crop Science here, they say mix it up, and the more diversity we can bring into the program, the more that we're going to do to sustain the program. The reason that we're in the situation that we are today in the States is because we grew Roundup Ready crops, followed by Roundup Ready crops, followed by Roundup Ready crops, and Roundup Ready. Roundup was the product of choice, obviously, in there, and as a result, I mean, we've got a lot of acres today that glyphosate's just not an effective option for us on.
Now you mentioned a few things that growers can be doing better. First of all, better use of pre-emergent herbicides.
Yeah, and that's the real key. I think a lot of guys don't want to invest that extra money into residual herbicides, but at the end of the day, what you've got to do is you take selection pressure off of your post-emergence herbicides. Post-emergence should only be there to use to kill the few weeds that come through a residual herbicide. In our systems, what we do is we start with a pre-emergence herbicide. 14 to 21 days later, we're going to use another residual or pre-emergence herbicide, and we're going to overlay those until we get crop canopy formation. I would like to see here in Ontario at least growers beginning to start with a pre-emergence herbicide, because by doing that, again, it's going to take selection pressure off of the post-emergence products.
And full rates.
Absolutely, full rates, and I think that's really the key. We've actually done some research in Arkansas. There's been some research that's been conducted, I know in Australia, showing that reduced rates actually increase selection pressure. They increase the number of escapes, and hence they result in the selection for herbicide resistance. So people at times when products are expensive are looking at ways to cut costs, and they cut costs at times by using reduced rates, and that in itself can definitely lead to herbicide resistance. And unfortunately, there's nothing coming behind this that's really going to solve these problems if we have widespread resistance.
Now you say as well, growers have got to do a better job post-emergent spraying. Watch those weeds and spray them at the right development stage?
The right development stage, absolutely. And I think, I mean, when you take a look at some of these weeds, you can go from having a 1-inch weed to having a 4 or 5-inch weed in a matter of a few days. And so timing is very critical. Again, that's why I get back and I tell my growers in the States, we say spray dirt at times. And what we're saying there is, at the end of the day, if you spray every 14, 21 days, you're going to have some small weeds out there. You may not have a lot of small weeds, but really that's where you're wanting to target that post-emergence application. If you take a look at product labels, there's not a product out there today that's going to tell you to spray 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch weeds, and unfortunately that's where we're timing most of our glyphosate or Roundup applications. That's where we're timing most of our post-emergence products, and you're not going to be successful long term if we continue to go down that road.
Yeah, and you need to manage the seed bank.
Absolutely, that's the key, and I think that's something a lot of growers overlook, is managing the soil seed bank. If the soil seed bank is extremely low, the risk of resistance is extremely low. Resistance is nothing more than a numbers game, in that the larger the soil seed bank, the greater the risk of resistance. Unfortunately, what we've been doing is we wait until herbicide resistance evolves or develops within the field, and once that happens, we've lost use of that herbicide and the soil seed bank is high. Then we introduce another herbicide. Well, the risk of resistance evolving at that point is also very high because of the high soil seed bank. We've actually got growers in our state that are hand weeding their crops, and the reason they're hand weeding their crops following the herbicide applications is to keep the soil seed bank low. If you keep the soil seed bank low, there's not a lot of time and effort going to be involved in hand weeding. You're just, again, preventing any seed production, and in turn, you're increasing the longevity of herbicides in general within that field.
Right. And the last point you always make is, hey, there's no silver bullet coming here, right?
There isn't a silver bullet. Unfortunately, again, we've looked in the past. If we look back at the 80s, the 90s, there was always something else coming. The last silver bullet, unfortunately, was glyphosate. Liberty is a great product. I've talked about Liberty today. A lot of our growers are using Liberty, but there's absolutely nothing coming behind this. There's nothing in the pipeline. It generally takes 8 to 10 years to commercialize a product. There's nothing on its way to commercialization at this point, so we can say 8 years from now, 10 years from now, we're not going to have any new modes of action. And what's interesting is, it was 1982, 1983 was the last time a mode of action was discovered and commercialized. And people want to talk about dicamba technologies, 2,4-D technologies that are coming, but at the end of the day, they're nothing more than a tool, very similar to what we have with Liberty, and there's not a silver bullet that we're gonna see in the near future.
Well, great message on diversity, Jason. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.